Now, Benjamin Netanyahu is facing increasing pressure to accept a peace plan for Gaza. But critics say he's prolonging the war to avoid what could come next. Let's take a look at Netanyahu's war so far. Well, from the beginning, Netanyahu insisted that Israel's military operation did not aim to displace Gazans. But 3 months later, more than 80% of Gaza's residents have fled their homes. Israel has reportedly approached Greek-administered Cyprus and the Democratic Republic of the Congo about permanently relocating Palestinians there. Netanyahu's war cabinet established safe zones throughout Gaza, but by December, the UN was calling them as zones of death as schools and hospitals used as shelters were repeatedly attacked. Initially, Netanyahu said Israel was asking people to evacuate in order to limit civilian casualties. It quickly became clear that civilians were not safe anywhere, and thus far around more than 25,000 people have been killed. Israel also says the war is primarily about bringing 130 hostages home. Dozens have been released in exchanges over the last 3 months, but Netanyahu rejected a recent proposal to end the fighting and trade all of the hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Now to Netanyahu's post-war plans, which remain unclear and appear to be evolving with the conflict. Governance by the Palestinian Authority seems a natural next step for Gaza. However, Netanyahu's stance has hardened, and he now says that Palestinians will not have any role in running the Strip after the conflict. The US insists on maintaining a two-state solution as a basis for negotiations, but Netanyahu has now ruled it out. He says the existence of a Palestinian state threatens Israeli national security. Now, Arab countries have expressed interest in rebuilding Gaza, but Netanyahu's stated vision is for Israel to have complete control. His right-wing partners speak of re-establishing Israeli settlements there. The US has maintained that reoccupation of Gaza is not on the cards, but Netanyahu has repeatedly stated that Israeli troops may remain there and will retake control of the Philadelphia corridor on the border between Gaza and Egypt. Let's get more on this now with Abigail Abarbanel, who's a psychotherapist and a Jewish peace activist. She joins us now from Scotland. Really good to have you with us, Abigail. I just read there a rundown of Netanyahu's changing stances throughout the course of this conflict. Can we start by what Netanyahu is likely guided by right now? We know that he's for sure a political survivor. What's guiding his actions right now? Is it the fact that he's in coalition with a hard right leadership?
To understand what looks like contradictions in what between what Netanyahu is doing or saying, you need to fully acknowledge that Israel is a settler colonial project. Israel's intent has always been to replace all the non-Jewish indigenous people of Palestine with Jews. This is what Israel is. It is a settler colonial project. Netanyahu and many leaders before him have always produced narratives that the West was prepared to tolerate. The two-state solution, as you know, I grew up in Israel and I served in the military there, and we always knew that the two-state solution was not real. It was something that Israel always said to the world in order to buy time and buy support for Israel so it could continue to do what it's doing. What you see in Gaza is simply consistent with the settler colonial project. Israel intends to take over the whole of Gaza. They don't know what to do with the Palestinians that are there, that are alive, millions of people. They realize now it's not that simple to kill millions of people, but they have no intention of keeping any Palestinian on historic Palestine. If Jewish Israel had its way, every last Palestinian will be removed. The fact that the Western world pretends that they don't understand that it's a settler colonial project and they still indulge Israeli narrative is just beggars belief. Everything Israel has always done, everything Netanyahu is doing is not inconsistent, is completely consistent with settler colonialism. And it's not even original. There have been many settler colonial powers before Israel and they have always acted the same way. The difference is Israel is acting in a modern world where everything it's doing is being seen. So it's a bit more tricky in terms of the narrative and in terms of the fact that everybody's watching and seeing. So they still use a bit of smoke and mirrors. But Israel is becoming more and more brazen because the world is enabling this.
Yes.
And there's no contradiction.
Well, when Israel was founded in 1948, it was founded on the understanding that there would be a separate Palestinian state. We know when that event happened, it's known as the Nakba among Palestinians, the catastrophe. Some 250,000 Palestinians who had called that region home for many generations were instantly made stateless and homeless. But as you say, this happened on the condition that there would be a Palestinian state. But you're saying that over the many decades since Israel was founded, the intention all along was never to create a Palestinian state. I'd like to bring in your background that you touched on briefly before. You, as you say, were a former Israeli citizen. You, in fact, fought in the Israeli army, but you then went on to renounce your Israeli citizenship. Why did you do that?
Back when I did that in 2001, I was not even as politically informed as I am now. I just couldn't tolerate what Israel was doing anymore to the Palestinians. It was in the time of Ariel Sharon. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. I did not want to be implicated by what Israel was doing. And I just couldn't tolerate the idea that I was still a citizen of a group, of a society that does the things that Israel does. That's why I did that.
Yes, and we know that it is compulsory for all Israeli citizens to conduct a military service, and they have to maintain some sort of a service every year. Explain to us how that process works and how that might go on to shape generations of Israeli mindsets with regards to Palestinians, both in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank.
Okay, let me just give you a little bit more background before I talk specifically about the military. From the moment you're born in Israel, you are taught that Jews are not safe anywhere except in Israel and with other Jews. You're also taught that Israel is the only thing that stands between Jews and complete annihilation. Jewish Israelis they're taught to believe that they have no choice, that if they don't protect their state, the state of Israel, they will die. I could tell you lots of stories, but I'm sure we don't have enough time on how that's actually done. But it's being fed through families, through the education system from the beginning of the moment that the child begins to grasp anything. This is what they're told. Israel has very much a psychology, almost like a cult. The world outside is not safe. It's only safe with your own people. And if the country is the only place the only thing that protects you, then the purpose of your life should be to protect that country. We all looked forward, including myself. We all looked forward to military service. I admire the conscientious objectors these days, but when I was 18, all I wanted was to go and join the military because you're accepted by your society. You believe you're doing the right thing. So you go to the military at about 18. Women serve for 2 years and men for 3 years, and sometimes it's longer if you do officers training. Then what happens is that when you finish your compulsory service, you're then called back to military duty for about a month a year, depending on your role and your rank. The military that you see that's committing the genocide in Gaza is actually not the 18-year-olds who are in compulsory service. These are the experienced, well-trained, everyday Israeli citizens. They could be anybody. Israel's military is, in fact, a citizens' military. Everybody in Israel know what their military is doing. So, but if they believe that everything depends on them and that they're about to be killed if the military doesn't do its thing, they support it 100%. The media in Israel sanitizes, for the benefit of those who still have a conscience in Israel, they sanitize the picture and they make Israeli soldiers look like heroes. We always believed that Israeli soldiers were heroes and that the Israeli military is so moral, it couldn't possibly commit atrocities, despite all the blatant evidence to the contrary. And when sometimes things like this do get exposed, there's shrug, shrug, we don't have a choice. It's either us or them. If we don't kill them, we're going to die. It's a very, very insular, very, very sick, in fact, psychology.
Okay, Abigail Aberbanel, I'm afraid we will have to leave it there, but it was really good to get your very unique viewpoint on the program. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.